Morena, good morning everyone. Welcome to our Environment and Climate Committee meeting on the 29th of July. If we want to all stand for our karakia, which is tuia. Tuia ki runga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki roto, tuia ki waho, tuia te here tangata, ka ronga te po, ka ronga te po. Humie, huie, tai kie. Thank you, everyone. I have an apology today from the Mayor, and I have an apology from Councillor Noonan for lateness. Councillor Laurie, I can see you've just arrived. Welcome. I don't think there's any other apologies for today, and so I'll move that our apologies be accepted. Seconded by Yvonne. We're going to use first names today. Just be a little bit. Seconded by Yvonne and Brian. Brian, were you putting your hand up to second it? Or? Oh, okay. Yvonne's moved, Brian second. All those in favour? Carried. Confirmation of order of business. We have a very light agenda today. It's no changes to the confirmation apart from Mike Fielding has cancelled his speaking slot for public forum. We still have John Higginbotham, who's here this morning. Welcome, John. Nice to see you. Do we have any calls for interests for today? No, I'm sure the interest register's updated as well. So then we will move straight into public forum. Yes. John, I'd like to invite you up to the table if you want to come and speak. And you have five. Good morning. And 5 minutes.
Rachel and esteemed councillors, thank you. So I came to talk about parking. Oh, sorry, thank you. I'm the lucky first one.
Only one.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I'll try to keep it to 4 minutes anyway. So I've written it down to keep things clear. I'm appearing this morning to seek your support on creating a kinder and gentler parking enforcement policy. Too many times wardens are patrolling residential neighborhoods well outside of the controlled parking zones and issuing very costly infringement notices, often to those who can least afford it. I have seen them going car to well-parked car looking for expired woofs and regos. This has happened to me right in front of my home. Our car was in good condition, washed. The rego was current, but the woof was about 2 months overdue. I was waiting for some minor repair work to be done, which ended up taking quite a while to sort. The fine for the expired woof is $200 and goes into the council's general fund. For some reason, the fine is greater than if I had been cited going 75 and a 50 and driving dangerously. As I was unhappy about this, I politely called customer service to ask why parking wardens would be patrolling residential streets with uncontrolled parking. I was told that there needed to be a complaint about the car, otherwise the warden would have made a special trip. This baffled me as to what neighbor was unhappy. It sort of disturbed me. So I eventually emailed Britt Edwards to see if there had been a complaint. He said that there hadn't been and there was no policy they could venture into any neighborhood. So I've never lived in a town. I lived in quite a few communities in my life where this occurred. It certainly is against the concept of peaceful enjoyment of your home. So I decided to take this to court to chat with the judge about whether the fine was valid if the car hadn't been driven, but mainly to tell the story and challenge the policy. When I went to court, I was very surprised as to the amount of time and energy the council team spent to prosecute the case. You may want to look into this. I lost, as I pretty much expected, and respectfully paid my fine plus legal costs. I need to be clear that I did not spend my considerable time to fight the fine, but instead see what I could do about this overly onerous policy. So there's a good PR opportunity here to be a kinder and gentler to the citizens, residents, and ratepayers of Nelson. The $200 fine is extremely high. But again, this complaint is not really about me as I can afford it. It's about the people who can least afford it and at the same time struggle with transportation, paying food, and power bills. Can I have 30 more seconds? Thank you. Most see patrolling these residential neighborhoods, unless driven by a complaint, as not serving the public's interest, unfair, and agree it should be changed. I would really appreciate you looking into the current policy and adjusting it for the better good of the community. It would be a good thing and show good faith. Thank you very much. So that's it.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
John. I have a question from Matt, then Rachel, then Pete.
Thanks, John.
Sure, yes.
Good to see you. I've actually got a question for staff, if that's okay. Is that all right? So here are the questions I'd like that. So I think a lot of people, John, will be surprised to find out that we have parking enforcement officers patrolling residential streets when there hasn't been a complaint. When you've talked about that to other people, how have they reacted?
I haven't heard one person who thought it was a good idea. One person said, well, you're a loser, you didn't have your woof, and it was kind of a sarcastic joke, but everybody, it annoys everyone, and they see it as, I guess I've never lived in a community where, I have to get a repair on my car, and, I can't get to the warrant, and then sometimes with it, I've actually seen the officers patrolling, the wards patrolling outside the area and going car to car and just checking the woofs. I have a photograph of it, but I'm not here to persecute the wardens. They're just doing their job.
Sure.
They're doing as instructed. So,
yeah.
But I see it as a big problem, and I see it as just really bad faith, and it makes people dislike the council, to be clear.
So through the chair, through still the chair, through Kate.
Yeah.
What do you think the policy should be? Because we have to make sure vehicles are safe. We have a role to play in that. So
Certainly,
what should we do?
and I completely agree with that. Now, this particular case, my car was safe. I was waiting for a sensor, okay. Can I keep going?
Oh, no, you can carry on because
Okay,
we're in
thank you.
questions. Yeah.
I think if there is a complaint, like somebody says there's an abandoned car, and they're outside the cordoned area, I don't think they should be going there and spending the ratepayers' money, to be honest, unless there's a complaint. So, and I see them going up Dommett Street, car to car, and that's all uncontrolled. I see them Shelbourne Street. I watched them go past the cordon area and go to 20 other cars, and then bingo, hit one. And I looked at it. It was only 2 months out. And so, I'm not sure if this is done for, I can't say that it's done for the name of safety, because the cars I saw ticket looks brand new. So it's probably, I hate to say it's probably to make money, but I'll be nicer. I'll hold back on that. But I think that probably if the warrants are 6 months out or the registers are 6 months out, and it's on a residential street, they shouldn't worry about it, unless the neighbor says, I think this car's abandoned, it's unsafe, or it's a strange car. It's a car that isn't on the street.
Sure.
We have to remember that a lot of old neighborhoods don't have garages in this town. They're built for cars, really. And the nicest parts of town, you have to park on the street. So on Harper Street, I'm always competing with the NMIT people. They park on the street in the day, and I accept that. I don't complain about that. But yeah, so I was a bit disappointed about that. But really, I feel sorry for people who have no money. I used to be, when I was a kid, just had enough money for a car. I had a job, and you'd always worry about that. But I think just on a residential street, it's out of line. If I was downtown, I would totally accept it. If I had driven it, used the parking meter, I would have said fine. So this really isn't about me. It's about the policy.
Oh, thanks, John.
Okay, thanks, John. We are running out of time a little bit, and I have Rachel and Pete. So if you just want to keep your answers a little bit more succinct, that would be great. Rachel?
Thanks, Kate. Kia ora, John. Thanks very much for that.
Yes.
You've highlighted some really interesting issues, and obviously it's not good for council community relations to have those kinds of things going on. I just wondered if you know, have you heard of other people having this kind of situation or concerns, or, I mean, is it, yeah,
Yes, everyone I mentioned to has a story, so it's
Right.
not,
okay.
it's not
so
unheard of.
isolated.
They go up on Ewa Street. It's a common problem. It's just sort of one of those nuisances that's, I don't know, it just comes into, should they be on quiet residential streets, randomly patrolling, you know? Is that the kind of enforcement you want in a
Yeah.
town? Or do you want people to be a little bit more relaxed?
And then just one really quick question, and obviously you're preparing, I mean, I'm amazed that you had the wherewithal to kind of take it to court, but did you look at what other kind of policies are around the country? I would be interested to know if you had any insight
Well,
into how this kind of
I've
thing is
lived in
treated around the
Auckland.
country.
I've never had a problem with residential streets. The ones that are signposted with parking limits, certainly.
Okay.
Everyone knows that, but I don't know. I don't think it's done. That was my gut feel. I know, and I've lived in California. I've lived in about 6 communities. We've never had wardens patrolling residential streets.
Okay, thanks
Yeah.
for that.
Pete.
Thank you. Well, it's good to hear that your attitude towards parking limits for in terms of timing.
Sorry?
You think it's fair enough that you should have, where it's time limited, you should be able to give tickets for people.
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge fine, really.
So, John, what I want to ask
Sorry,
you
yeah.
is, was that ticket the first ticket that you had got for a warrant thing on your car?
Oh,
Or in a short period, like within a year or something?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I haven't gotten one for quite a while.
So my question would be, if a system was put in place whereby for the first offence you got a friendly warning, and then obviously they recorded your number, and then the next time they're around, it was still there, you got a ticket. How would you feel about that?
I think it's okay, but I still don't think they should be patrolling quiet
Okay.
residential streets.
Okay, right, thank you. That's fine.
Thanks so much, John, for coming in and presenting. My understanding is that if you've got a warrant and your warrant's failed, then you can provide that as well. Were you told that?
Yes, well, that's the law. Basically, it's not a courtesy. It's if you do it within 30 days.
Yeah.
That's a national law. So it's not like it's not a gimme. So I guess the situation where you are waiting for a repair is the problem. Because I mean, I waited 3 months to get an appointment at my panel beater, and that's what I was waiting for. So because there was one sensor out, it's
Okay.
otherwise completely safe. So yes, yeah. Any other quick? Yeah, ask
Okay.
more, please.
Okay, no, I think that's so you have 30 days. So if you fail your warrant, you have 30 days to sort that out. But
Yeah, but you can't
yours is taking longer.
sort it out. So what actually happened was, in my case, so I took it back in after I finally got this appointment, and I got to read. They said, "Oh, there's something else wrong." Okay, fine. Okay, go back and fix that. Then it was, 31 days after the warrant. So then they charged me for another warrant. So it ended up taking like 4 months
Okay.
to finally get to the. So it's not about. Sometimes you cannot solve it in 30 days.
Okay. All right. That's helpful. Trudy?
What's that?
Trudy has one more question.
Hi,
Sorry.
John. Can I just ask a clarifying question, please?
Sure.
You
Yeah.
said you got the fine and it was $200, but did you receive any other notifications prior to that advising you that the car had been identified as being parked there or abandoned or anything like that? Did you receive any previous warnings giving you a time frame to remove
No,
the
not
car
at
from
all.
the
We
road?
just got the ticket, and I called up and inquired about it. I tried to get to parking services, and I couldn't get through. So the customer service people were the one that they actually told me if they thought the policy was it had to be complaint driven in a residential street.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that policy. I'm just also aware that generally you're given a notice advising a time frame if the car's been abandoned or to remove it from the public road
No, it wasn't.
and stuff like that. So you hadn't received any warnings prior to the fine?
I had nothing to do with abandonment. It was just the woof.
Yeah.
Because the reg, it was good.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, John, for coming in and presenting to us. I think we're going to end the conversation now, unless it's something really important, Matt.
Yeah, it's not, John can leave if he wants.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, John, for
Yeah.
presenting to us today.
I can provide a copy of this if you wish. And I also have an email chain with the Brent Edwards that might be useful.
Yeah, I will
Yeah.
follow up with Claire and we'll
Okay.
ensure that we are kind.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
All right, thanks, John.
guys. Yep.
Just with respect to follow-up,
Yeah,
because there's a number of questions around the table, because on, I think, the last term of council, we actually made a change so that if you were found to have an expired warrant of fitness, for example, in Wakatu Square, you didn't automatically get a $200 fine, which is what we used to do.
yeah,
But the council made a decision that actually we'd encourage officers to use some discretion.
Yeah.
And so we started handing out
reminders.
reminders,
Yeah.
to get it done, which I thought was a step forward. This feels like a step backwards.
Yeah.
What I would like is an email to councillors explaining the logic to patrolling in residential streets without complaints. And I'd also like to know when the policy is coming up for review.
Okay, thank
Is that
you.
all right?
Yes, and if I could just add through the chair, I think there's some other questions in there, which is around what we are legislated and required to actually do. Because the fine, for example, is not something that is of our making. So we can add some
Totally.
extra
Understand
context
that.
in there.
But the question of why we are patrolling in residential streets when there hasn't been a complaint, I think would be good for us to get our heads around.
Plus the
So-
opportunity to leave a friendly reminder. I think that's a helpful.
And we do that where it's within a 2-month period, but after 2 months, it becomes a legislative issue.
Okay, so we leave a friendly reminder on all cards if it's within 2 months, and then, but if it's over 2 months, it sounds like we're legally obliged to.
I would still like to get an email
Yeah.
explaining that, and I'd also like to know when the policy is coming up for review.
Okay.
Thank you very
I
much.
think that's great.
So-
I think the policy will have to comply with the legislation.
Okay, since it's been said twice now, I need to clarify this. The legislation, as I understand it, does not say that council officers have to patrol streets
Yeah.
without complaints. Because it sounded, from what I was just hearing, that might be what the legislation says, and I don't believe that's the case.
No, I didn't say that component. I said the fine component was legislated, and I said that the component about the 2 months was. I understand you want some explanation about the policy, which I will provide.
Great.
And I will outline why we might be patrolling those streets.
Great, and when we get when the opportunity to review the policy comes up.
Great. I don't think
Yeah.
there is a policy.
Or,
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
I think Rachel,
Thank you,
we're going
Claire.
to move on. I think Claire has got a very clear understanding of what we need to look at, and I think that's really helpful feedback. So thank you, Matt. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, confirmation of minutes. So, which is pages 6 to 13. I have Mel who's moved the minutes. Do I have someone who's happy to second? Brian? All those in favour? Minutes are carried. Thank you. We're going to move on to the next item in the agenda, which is item number 6. Oh, that's Chairperson's report. I don't have a Chairperson's report today. Just to update you briefly, we have a workshop today on Good Food City. So we have Nelson Marlborough Health coming in and presenting on proposed wording. Hopefully we'll have quite a fun brainstorming session on that to get some input from all councillors as to what they would like us to do moving forward in terms of food resiliency for our community. And then next Tuesday, we'll be having a workshop on climate change and how we want to move forward on some of our thinking around climate change. Are there any questions? Mel has a question.
Madam Chair, Kate, I thought we were having a workshop following this meeting today on the action plan for our climate emergency.
that was what I thought was going to happen. So it was scheduled for today. It was actually scheduled for last year, and then May, and then June. But there have been some delays with working up the document. I hope that it's going to be ready for us for next Tuesday.
Not that I think, Madam Chair, we should be working this through and pushing this through in haste. Quite the opposite, in actual fact. I think it's so important that we should take time, because it is a call to action, a call for action, actually. And it could be, eventually, a very historic document and policy and plan for this council. So I'm, in fact, pleased that it's been delayed.
Oh, okay.
I am, because I just think it's so important that everything is right with it, the wording, particularly the wording, that it needs to excite and the toning is correct. So I don't want to see it rushed. I know we've voted 52 million over the next 10 years, I think it is, for this work. And it's extremely important work, but it must not be rushed.
Thanks, Mel. Just to be clear, the 52 million is for stormwater infrastructure for climate change adaptation.
Yep.
This piece of work is around our emissions reduction, community emissions reduction, adaptation for us and the community as well. And I haven't actually seen a draft yet, so I'm looking forward to seeing that, looking forward to seeing some strong storytelling wrapped around that, in line with the Nelson Tasman Climate Forum's work and in line with our long-term plan work. So that's what we'll be workshopping next Tuesday. Hopefully we can have some input into making sure that we tell a story to our community about how we want to shape our city in response to climate change. So I think that workshop's in the afternoon, isn't it? So yeah, it's a really important workshop to be at, and looking forward to having you all contribute to that. Are there any more questions? Trudy.
Thank you, through the chair. I just want clarification. You just said the workshop next on the Good Food Cities was to formulate the wording. Have we predetermined an outcome for that workshop?
No. So this is a workshop for you to hear from Nelson Marlborough Health, to have some presentations and to look at food resiliency and to provide your feedback, and then it'll come up through a staff report, and then you'll determine at that staff report what your view is. So it's an opportunity to input into what a good food city might look like. It's quite a separate piece of work to the C40 Good Food Cities piece of work. Tim?
Yeah, thank you. I have raised an email, but maybe staff can answer this. It's all good in regards to well-beings, but I do think that this food resilience and good food cities is outside our scope, even though we're very supportive of that. And I would have thought it'd be more of a DHB or central government.
So you've made your views really clear through an email, so I don't think we need to get into that in the meeting today.
Well, I'd be happy for a staff response on this and to justify reason for this workshop. I know, because you see talking about a policy coming up on food resilience. I'm happy to attend if it is of council work.
I think you've made your view. I think you've emailed a very clear viewpoint. I think that every other councillor, if you don't have to attend workshops, no one has to attend workshops. I think that there was a definite willingness in the room from the majority of councillors to look at this piece of work. If you don't want to be at the workshop, that's entirely up to you, Tim. So where you put your energy and time, every councillor has different priorities. Where you put your energy and time is probably quite different to where other councillors want to put their energy and time.
My question really was
the end of your
questions of the staff.
Thank you. Judine?
I mean, I was probably just going to suggest that, you know, you've just mentioned in your chair's report that we're going to be having the workshop, but discussion of, you know, outlining what the workshop's going to contain and what the goals and objectives are usually done at the start of the workshop.
Yeah.
And so maybe we could do that then rather than now in the meeting.
I think that would be great. Thank you. There was some background reading sent through. I think Rachel's read it. I'm sure that some of you will have had a time to look at it. If you haven't, it'll be printed out and shared at the start of the workshop. Okay, thank you so much. We don't have to accept, it was just a verbal update. Matt.
Sorry, but there's just a bit of housekeeping. John Higginbotham left this. It was his paperwork. He would like it distributed to the councillors.
Okay.
Is that okay with you? Should I go and get it photocopied by Jenny and bring it back?
Yes, that's fine. If you just pass it to the EAs and it will be attached to the presentation, yep, to the minutes. Thanks, Matt. Okay, so we're going to move on to item number 7 of the agenda, which is, we have Maxine. Oh, here she is. Hi, Maxine. Welcome. Pages 14 onwards. It's such a small agenda. Here we are, 14 to 15. Welcome, Maxine. Wrong button. Good morning. Technically challenged this morning. Okay, I'll take the report as read, but essentially it is a report to update you on some of the engagement activities that are coming up on the draft Nelson plan, along with just a bit of a summary and recap of some of the things that have been happening over the last 12 months to just provide a bit of a context to what we've been doing. And I think probably the key things to note is there's actually been quite a large amount of engagement going on across a broad range of topics. And we have some sort of remaining items that need to be discussed with the community in a kind of a draft sense before we form a view ahead of finalising the plan and notifying it. So all of the engagement is on draft material. And this next set is focused on flood hazards, the airport zone, and some issues around port noise that we are trying to resolve. And that engagement is going to be happening from mid-August through to mid-September. We'll be asking for feedback, and following that, we will bring the sort of outcomes from that back to the council for your consideration. And that's probably the end of what I need to say. And if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one, and that's regarding the port noise. I think the proposal was just to be consulting with those that someone has identified as being affected, but I know that it actually spreads further than what that plan is, and I would like it to go a bit further than that.
When you say a bit further, can you just help me understand what you are thinking?
Well, potentially, I guess, going over the last maybe 2 years, 3 years of complaints and where they've come from, because as the port moves around further, it's affecting more properties at night and the early hours of the morning. And I think they should have the opportunity to have a conversation about that.
Okay, I'll have a look at that.
Thanks.
Rohan, then Brian, then Matt, then Mal.
Thanks, Kate. Just on that 4.1, just clarification, when it's worked through the feedback and present this to council, is that for decision making at council at that point?
Typically, we do it in a workshop format so that you can see the kind of general flavour of feedback that's been received, and we would potentially try and discuss preferences for directions of changes from the draft at that point. Your ultimate decision about what's contained and what directions taken is through a decision report to council about the plan. So there's subsequent decisions, but typically we'll workshop the feedback first. Thanks, Rohan. I have Brian next.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. I've got a couple of questions. Just in 3.6, you talk about the flood hazard, and the last time it was done, the flood mapping was in 2017. And you've updated the map, so what's the impact of that? Are there people who will be out of the 2017 mapping and other groups who will find themselves in the new mapping? So
Yes, that's correct. Largely, it still affects about 5,000 properties under the old and new, but there is some, there's about 700 to 800 properties that either are coming out or coming back in. So about the same number who've come out are coming back in. And the reason that they're coming out is largely to do with sort of flood improvement works that have happened and drainage improvements works. Also recalibration of some of the model based on new NIWA data. And for the properties that are coming in, a number of those are to do with the inclusion of sea level rise, the revised figures from MFE about sea level rise, along with increased rainfall intensity and expanding the time frame out to the 100-year plus parameters. So, of course, the further out you send that time frame, the more sea level rise and the higher intensity there is. So it covers a slightly larger area. Yeah.
Right, so is it down to individual properties, or are you just doing it on more of a landscape scale?
The model is a regional model of the floods, so there is, but we can test the model down at a relatively, I won't say specific property level, but broadly at a property level, yes.
Okay, thanks. Right, the next one is the airport noise. Is there an airport noise committee similar to what we've got the port noise committee?
Not an airport
not
noise.
aware of. Do you know what details the airport company have done with? I think they've got some kind of working group that deals with the noise issues. Natasha's might be able to answer.
Good.
I can't remember the exact name, but there is a group. Yes, you're right. I think it's in the RMA. In the Nelson plan, not the Nelson plan. The NRMP, it sets it out as well.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
And is this how you're going to have any?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's fine. So there's something
we can look into.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
And the other one is the designation for the airport. Is there there'll be no proposed changes to the designation?
We're just working with the airport at the moment. We are expecting them to come forward with some proposals for changes to their designations, and they're really working through what they are wanting to change in their designation. So our request out to all of the requiring authorities has been issued. We expect to hear back from them by the end of August as to what they're seeking to either roll over or expand or keep.
Okay, thanks. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Brian. Matt.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Maxine. One of the things that I'm most excited about the Nelson plan is the potential for it to enable citizens to build secondary dwellings on their properties without subdividing. And this is an idea that's been floating around for quite a long time, and I know there's a lot of enthusiasm for it. What are we saying to people if they come to council now saying that is something they want to do? They want to put a secondary dwelling on their property without subdividing. They understand this might be something that the plan will enable, but the plan is still a way off. So what do we say to them?
So through the chair, I might be able to answer that more than Maxine. So we have nearly finished some comms material that will be going onto our website, which very much does that. So it sets out the processes and it encourages people to do all sorts of residential development. The navigator role that you all signed off on, we're just in the process of recruiting for that. So fingers crossed that will also assist. So that role is also around housing and making sure that if somebody wants to do a development that includes housing, they know what the process is and we can help them through. And certainly the consents team are very active in terms of encouraging people to come in and do what they need to do.
That sounds great, and I'm really looking forward to those comms. Just following up then, but going back to my question, what do we say? What do we say to people when they come and they say, this is what I want to do, I've heard about it, other places do it, in other countries it sounds like a great idea, I've got this bit of land at the back of my place, what do you say? Can I do it? What do we say to them?
So currently under the current NRMP, it does trigger a consent requirement. So we still have to go through that process, but we're being as encouraging as we possibly can to say to them, please do that. The process will be straightforward. Okay.
And just to remind...
Sorry, within the confines of if there's an issue with boundaries, you know, in terms of
Sure.
proximity to neighbours and things, that might be another issue. But if it's within the confines of the site and there aren't bigger issues, then that's fine.
Okay, and just as a reminder, when will we be in a place where they don't have to do that, when they, you know, they'll be able to do it as a right?
When they
If
don't need a
everything goes
resource
according to plan.
consent, I think is-
It assumes that the plan will get through as proposed. And if that's the case, it's once decisions are issued on the Nelson plan. And I can't give you an exact timeframe for that, Matt. I can tell you that, you know, we still are aiming to notify the plan next year. And it highly depends on the amount of submissions we get, the time it takes to hear those submissions and the time it takes to issue the decisions. So, you know, that can take a year or two to get that through. It's a unitary plan. It's a really big plan to hear and decide. So these are big processes that take a long time.
And just to remind me, finally, we started this process in 2014. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Just checking. Thanks.
just to be clear though, but you can at the moment build a secondary dwelling for family, can't you? So you can build a secondary, like a granny flat or a studio for a child or something. So technically, if it's for family, you're allowed to build a second dwelling.
You can build up to 30 metres, 30 square metres.
That's
at the moment.
That's under the Building Act, but under the resource, under our NRNP, under our NRNP, you can build a second dwelling.
There are some granny flat kind of provisions that are in there at the moment. But if somebody wants to build something a little bit more than that or something, they're likely to trigger a resource consent process.
I understood it was like 10 metres or 15 metres, square metres under our current rules.
That's the Building Act. So the Building Act allows you to build up to 30 square metres now unconsented, but under our existing resource consent rules, you can build a second dwelling and you can build it bigger than 30 square metres if it's for family. You can build a granny flat with a second kitchen.
Right.
That's under the definition of a minor residential unit, the term that's used in the NRNP. I don't believe that there is a size limit on it, but it has to have, there's other things it has to be in the same ownership and it has to have a kitchen and there's other things, but I don't know that there's a size limit. But it is a granny flat. It's not like a standalone unit that can be sold or anything.
I would really like to see where it says that you can do that, because I'm not aware that you are able to do that.
Well, I went and talked to the building consent officer and the resource consent officer, and I got told very clearly that if it wasn't a tiny house and it was a studio flat, then you can do that. So under our rules, you can currently build a small dwelling.
I really don't think that's right. So I'm looking forward to the email that explains that, because I believe it's 10 metres without any notice, any approval, up to 15 if you ask, and then under the Building Act you're now allowed to build up to 30, but they're not secondary dwellings. I don't think you can put a kitchen in them, so it'd be good to get that clarified. Thanks.
I'll get more information, but I can't answer it.
Okay, all right. Okay, we're going to move on to, I had Mal, then Brian, then Rachel.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Maxine, for your report. I wanted to go back to the point that was raised by Gail in relation to the port noise 3.8. And I really want to know, why officers decided to adopt a more targeted approach to this matter, simply because I understand the number of people concerned about port noise is increasing, not diminishing. As far as council is concerned, I'm not too sure about the port. They paint a different picture, but from our perspective, it seems to be on the rise. So I'd like to know why we've decided to take that approach at this time.
So just regarding the complaints, the analysis of complaints shows that the number of complaints, yes, has increased. The number of complainants hasn't necessarily increased. So some of the same people are complaining more frequently about noise. Look, we've taken a targeted approach largely because what we're consulting on is quite technical in nature. The way in which port noise is managed is not for the faint-hearted. It's not straightforward stuff. It does really affect quite a limited set of people. And so while others may have views, the most important people that we hear from are those people at the port and around the port. And so hence we've taken the targeted approach.
Fine, well, thank you for that. How wide was the coverage previously? You're more targeted now, but previously, how wide was the?
The engagement to date that we've done on port noise? Yes. So we've really been talking with the port noise liaison committee and the Nelson Environment Action Group, who have been regularly in contact with council about noise issues.
Good. Thank you for that. And my second one, Kate, is to Maxine, is 3.4 to do with the coastal hazards. The team continued to work through the dynamic adaptive planning pathway process, and you go on to say the people that you've communicated with. And the last line here says the outputs from this process will be reported to council separately. How's that progressing, and when can we expect to see that come to us?
It's progressing really well. The workshop that we held with the other agencies was a very well attended and sort of thoughtful process that a number of agencies sort of inputted on about their understanding of risks and impacts. And our staff at the moment are just really processing that feedback. There was a lot of material generated at it, and we're trying to, turn it into something cohesive and coherent that makes sense for us to use. The purpose of it is really to help us understand and prioritise what we focus on next. You'll be getting a report either at the next Environment and Climate Committee or the one following that. Just depends on sort of the internal process to get it ready. But within the next few months, you'll see that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maxine. Next I have Brian and then Rachel. Oh, look, I've got you on the list twice. Rachel.
Thanks, Kate. I've just got a couple of small questions. I'm looking on page 15 of the agenda. Under 3.4, the sentence around, or the paragraph around dynamic adaptive planning pathway process. The last sentence says the outputs from that process will be reported to council separately. So I'm just wondering whether you are able to give us any information about when that might be. Is it going to be publicly reported? Is it going to be not confidential, or is it going to be, or otherwise?
It is unlikely to be confidential. I don't expect there to be any reason for it to be confidential. And really, I would expect it within the next 2 sittings of the Environment and Climate Committee. It's likely to, be used as part of further comms with the public. We do expect to have a subsequent round of engagement with the community before the end of the year around sort of taking region-wide impacts and risk assessment, and then seeking feedback from the community about how they're responding to risks and impacts. And then we are likely to really wait and see what comes out of the central government work on the Climate Adaptation Act before we take any really significant next steps in this space, because it is likely that will be a bit of a game changer for what our options are.
Awesome, thanks. Just 2 more questions. The next paragraph down, 3.5, talks about the next phase of engagement. And with the dash, it says updated flood hazard mapping. My understanding that there was a workshop scheduled a few weeks back and that this was cancelled, so there's no workshop for elected members scheduled or at the moment. And so I'm just wondering, does this present any issues for the consultation process if the elected member workshop hasn't actually happened?
There is one now scheduled for the 31st of August, so we've found a time slot. The issues have been finding time in front of the councillors. And largely, the council away, our workshop got subsumed by the LTP. And so really it is just an element of practicality that's involved with the timing of it.
And so will that be before the consultation begins with the public?
Not quite, no. The consultation's likely to start on the 18th of August.
Okay, so is there any?
So you received the workshop material and maps for the ahead of the June workshop that was programmed. So you've got the material. We're happy to have a chat around it if you particularly want to come and have a talk to us. I think that's probably as much as I can offer at the moment. And then at the workshop, there will be opportunity to really look at it in detail.
And so then just about around the consultation, from reading this, it seemed that the consultation is going to be in relation to flood hazards noted on limbs. Is that the case, or is it, is it going to be kind of, I guess, when will council be undertaking broader community-wide adaptation consultation? Having conversations around what the risks are, what the I guess looking at some point in the future, we have to have a conversation with the community about the likelihood of managed retreat adaptation. When do we have that conversation with the community?
Okay. Well, there's lots happening internally on that space, trying to coordinate across the council to make sure we've got the sort of right information at the right stages to be talking to the community. The update that you'll get through the feedback around the DAP process is probably the going to set out quite clearly what the next steps are and how that's going to work. And that will be also setting out when we expect to talk to the community about the options, and one of those options may be managed retreat. But as I noted about the central government work at the moment, we're expecting to see something about managed retreat. We don't know if it will or won't, actually come out. But I think it's, really wise for us to just see what comes out of central government on that before we charge ahead, because these are really delicate spaces, and at the moment we have very limited tools on the managed retreat space.
Yeah, and actually on that note, I sat in on a local government and climate change conference, and one of the councils, maybe down south, I think, Queenstown Lakes District Council, their staff said something pretty much to the effect of that they had kind of moved ahead on some stuff, and then legislation had come out and they found had kind of been, a little preemptive. So it's, totally get that. Thanks, Maxine, appreciate that.
Thanks, Rachel. Trudy, I think I have Trudy, and that's all. Hopefully that's it, and we can move the recommendation. And
I was actually just going to move the recommendation.
Oh, great.
And, actually just really hope that the information that Claire said about the navigator role, that we get some really cool people apply for it and we get on with that really ASAP.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks, Trudy. So moved by Trudy, seconded by Rachel. So anyone else wish to debate or comment? In which case I'm going to put the recommendation. All those in favour? Aye, that's carried. Thank you. We're going to move into confidential very briefly. Trudy's going to move. I'll second. All those in favour? Tim, I hope you're going to come back for the workshop maybe. Yeah, great. This shouldn't take us hopefully more than a couple of minutes.